The galaxy was vast. It stretched across countless light years, filled with ancient civilizations and strange species, each with its own culture and way of life. Among them, the Galactic Council was the most powerful. It was an organization formed by the most advanced species in the universe, and they were responsible for maintaining peace and order in the galaxy. The Council's laws were absolute. They governed every interaction, every war, and every decision made between the species. Yet there was one law that stood out from all the others, a law that no one truly understood, but everyone respected. Humans were off limits. No one, no matter how powerful, was allowed to harm them. This strange rule had been passed centuries ago, and it had been quietly enforced ever since. At first, the other species had ignored Earth. They believed humans were insignificant, primitive even, barely worthy of attention. The Council had never explained why the law existed, only that it was there. But as time went on, the galaxy began to notice something. Despite being one of the youngest species, humans seemed to possess an uncanny ability to survive, to adapt, and to overcome. Some even whispered that humanity held secrets so dangerous, the Council could not afford to let anyone know the truth. Now, the Council had gathered in an emergency meeting. High-ranking leaders from across the galaxy filled the massive chamber, their eyes fixed on the central platform where the Council spoke. The air was thick with tension, and the whispers grew louder. Something had happened, something that would shake the very foundations of the Council. A transmission had arrived from the edge of known space, a distress signal. A fleet of alien ships, once thought to be invincible, had launched an attack on a small human colony. This was a direct violation of the Council's most sacred law. No one was to harm humans. Yet when the Council's fleet arrived to intervene, they found something that no one had expected. The human colony was still standing. The alien fleet was not. The report was chilling. The human colony had fought back, and against all odds, they had won. How could this be? The aliens were known for their strength and advanced weapons, yet the humans had somehow turned the tide of battle. The reports mentioned strange phenomena, powerful energy fields, and weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. But the most disturbing part was the feeling of fear that gripped the entire Council as they read the transmission. It wasn't just a battle won. It was a message. And that message was clear. Humans were not as weak as they seemed. A young representative from the Tarnak species, a race known for its quick temper, slammed his fist on the table. "This is unacceptable," he shouted. "We cannot allow this to happen. The humans have violated the laws of our galaxy. We must strike them down before they become a threat to us all." But the room fell silent. The older representatives, who had seen more of the galaxy's history, exchanged uneasy glances. They knew something the young representative didn't. They had seen what humans were capable of, and they feared it. One of the oldest members of the Council, a creature known as the Alfar, who had been present when the law was first passed, slowly stood. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of centuries. "We cannot simply attack them," he said, his voice low. "There is more at play here than you understand. You see, we have kept a secret, one that we've kept hidden from the galaxy. We don't know why humans have this power, but we do know this. They are not to be underestimated." The room grew colder. The Council had known this for centuries, and yet they had never revealed the truth. No one had questioned it. No one had dared. But now, with the rise of humanity, the secret could no longer stay buried. The younger representative turned to the Alfar, confusion written all over his face. "What do you mean? What power do humans possess that we cannot challenge?" The Alfar's eyes glowed as he answered, "We don't fully understand it ourselves. But there's something inside humans, something ancient, something primal. It has always been there, hidden deep within them. And if we provoke them, if we push them too far, we may unleash a force that no one in the galaxy can control. That is why the law was created. That is why humans are off limits." The young representative shook his head, unable to grasp the weight of the words. But if they're so powerful, why haven't they revealed this strength before? The Alfar hesitated. Perhaps they were waiting for the right moment. Perhaps they were waiting for the galaxy to push them too far. The silence in the room was thick with fear. No one spoke. The reality of what had just been said hung heavily in the air. The Council had known about humanity's potential all along. They had kept their distance because they feared what might happen if humans ever fully awakened their true power. And now, the galaxy would face the consequences of ignoring that silent rule. The younger representative finally spoke, his voice quieter this time. Then what should we do? What's next? The Alfar's gaze was steady, unblinking. We wait, and we watch, but we do not provoke them further. If we do, we may regret it. And so, the Council's meeting ended, but the tension in the room lingered. A law had been passed centuries ago to protect the galaxy from humanity, and now that law had been broken. The galaxy would never be the same again. And somewhere, in the depths of the universe, humanity was preparing for what would come next. The Galactic Council had hoped that the victory of the human colony was a fluke, an accident that could be dismissed. But deep down, they all knew the truth. It wasn't an accident. And the reports that flooded in from across the galaxy only confirmed their fears. Across multiple systems, human colonies were rising in power, their defenses stronger than anyone had anticipated. More distress signals were being sent out from ships and outposts that had been attacked by other alien species, but the story was always the same. The humans fought back. They didn't just defend themselves, they obliterated their attackers. Each victory sent a shockwave through the galaxy, and the once feared alien fleets were beginning to crumble. Yet there was no official declaration of war from Earth. Humans weren't declaring battles or flaunting their power. They weren't even asking for help. They had simply fought back with a fierce determination, something no one had expected. The Council had to act, but what were they supposed to do? They had spent centuries in power, carefully managing the balance of the galaxy. They had all seen what humans were capable of, but no one had truly grasped the depth of their strength. This wasn't just about military might. There was something deeper at play, something ancient. At the heart of the Council's dilemma was an unsettling truth that no one wanted to face. Humans were more than just a young species that had grown powerful. They were connected to something older, something that had been forgotten by most of the galaxy. Some of the oldest species in the universe, those who had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, had spoken in hushed tones of a force that could not be measured by technology or strength, a force that had once been known only to the oldest species, but was now awakening within humanity. Do you understand what this means? A voice cut through the tension in the council chamber. It was Talion, a member of the council, and one of the few who had survived the many shifts of power in the galaxy. He was known for his calm demeanor and years of wisdom. But even his voice now carried a tremor of uncertainty. If we don't act soon, the balance of the entire galaxy will shift, and we will be powerless to stop it. The chamber fell silent. No one could disagree with him. The rise of humanity was no longer something that could be ignored. We've known for centuries, the Alfar, an ancient member of the council, added. His eyes seemed to see through everything, beyond the walls of the chamber, into the heart of the universe itself. We feared this moment, but we believed it would never come. Humans were never meant to ascend so quickly. Their power, it grows faster than we expected. But how? Talion asked. His voice shook slightly, betraying the fear that had gripped his thoughts. How could a species so young, so primitive, have such power? The Alfar sighed, his ancient voice heavy with sorrow. The answers lie within them. Something has awakened inside humanity. They possess the potential to harness powers we haven't seen in eons. Powers that were thought to have been lost to time. What powers? Talion pressed. What could they possibly have that could threaten us? The room grew even colder, and the faces around the table were drawn tight with concern. The Alfar was silent for a long moment, his ancient mind grappling with how much he could share without revealing too much. Long ago, before the formation of the Galactic Council, before even the oldest civilizations, there was a species, the Ancients. They were the ones who shaped the galaxy, who built the foundations of the universe we know today. But their power was not just technological. They were connected to the very fabric of existence. They could bend the laws of nature, control the elements, and manipulate energy in ways no one can understand. But when they disappeared, their power was lost to time. Or so we thought. The room was eerily still. The members of the council exchanged looks of disbelief and growing unease. Could it be true? Could humanity be the inheritors of such power? I've seen it myself, the Althar continued. When humans fought back against the alien fleets, they didn't just use their weapons. No, they drew from something deeper, something ancient within themselves. It was as if they awakened a dormant part of their being. The power they wielded, it was unlike anything we've ever seen. It was as if they were tapping into something that existed before time itself. The chamber erupted in whispers. A power like that, from a species that had been overlooked, ignored even. How could the galaxy have been so blind? We must act, Talion said, his voice now sharp with urgency. We cannot allow this power to grow unchecked. The galaxy's balance will be destroyed if we don't control it. If we don't act now, humanity could become unstoppable. But even as he spoke, there was a nagging doubt in the back of his mind. Was this the right course of action? If humanity held such power, was it wise to stop them? Or would it only provoke something far worse? The council was divided, their decisions now clouded with uncertainty. For the first time in centuries, they faced an enemy they could not easily understand. And deep inside, they all knew one thing. They had made a grave mistake in underestimating the strength of humanity. Across the galaxy, humans had no idea what was coming. They had no idea that the very species that had once controlled everything now feared them. But soon, they would find out, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As news of humanity's power spread, so did the whispers of fear and disbelief. The Galactic Council had made its first attempt to contain the situation, but what they were facing was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The galaxy was home to many powerful species, but none had ever threatened to shake the very foundations of their control like humans had. The Council's first move was to issue a formal warning to the outer colonies. Do not provoke the humans, it read. Their strength is unlike anything we've seen before. This warning was not just a statement. It was a desperate plea, one that carried with it the weight of centuries of authority. But the warning was met with skepticism. Most alien species believed the Council was overreacting, a reaction to a minor disturbance that would soon pass. But within the Council itself, the fear was palpable. Every report, every new encounter with humans, confirmed their worst fears. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were evolving, adapting at a terrifying pace. Every day, humanity's power seemed to grow exponentially, and the Council's response was growing more desperate. It started with minor skirmishes. A single human vessel, armed with outdated technology, would defeat an entire alien fleet. At first, the Council thought it was luck. But as more reports flooded in, it became clear this was no accident. The humans had something more, something that could not be explained by conventional weapons or tactics. Is this possible? Asked Lynette, the Council's strategist, his voice barely above a whisper. He had studied human history for decades, analyzing their methods, their behavior, but even he was stunned by their rapid advancement. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. The fear was not just in their strength, but in their resilience. The humans seemed to have an unbreakable will to survive. When a fleet of aliens attacked a human outpost, the humans fought back with tactics no one had ever seen before, cunning and precision that rivaled the greatest military minds in the galaxy. Their technology, although primitive compared to the advanced alien civilizations, was proving to be highly effective. What are they? Lynette asked again, his voice trembling. How are they doing this? The room fell silent. No one had an answer. The Council's greatest minds had been unable to crack the code behind humanity's success. But they all knew one thing for certain. They could no longer afford to underestimate them. The tension in the council chambers grew as they debated what to do next. The more they tried to control the humans, the more they fought back. A few factions suggested a show of force, perhaps a direct assault on Earth. But others, including the ancient Alfar, warned against it. I've seen this before, the Alfar said, his ancient voice heavy with wisdom. There is something ancient within humanity. We cannot simply destroy them. If we attack, we may provoke something far worse than we can imagine. It was a chilling thought. Could the humans have access to power that even the oldest species in the galaxy feared? The Alfar's warnings were not without merit. The ancients, those who had shaped the very fabric of the galaxy, had always been cautious of humanity. And now, the Council was facing the consequences of ignoring those warnings. Despite the Council's deliberations, one thing was becoming clear. Humanity was not going to go down quietly. They weren't going to be bullied or controlled. They had the will, the strength, and the means to push back against an empire that had ruled the galaxy for eons. Meanwhile, the human leaders were unaware of the Council's deliberations. They had no idea that the very beings they had once feared were now debating their fate in secret chambers. The humans were focused on something far more important: survival. They knew they were being targeted, but they didn't know why. All they knew was that they had to keep fighting, keep pushing back, no matter the odds. And so, while the Galactic Council plotted and schemed, humanity continued to evolve, to grow stronger. The battles they fought were more than just about survival. They were about something far deeper, something that no alien species could understand. But there was one undeniable truth: humanity was not backing down. The Galactic Council was beginning to feel the weight of their own decisions. Despite their best efforts to contain the situation, humanity continued to defy them. A series of rapid victories by the humans, seemingly against all odds, had shaken the foundations of their power. The more they tried to understand the source of humanity's strength, the more perplexed they became. It wasn't just about technology or firepower. The humans didn't have the most advanced ships or the deadliest weapons. In fact, their technology was considered crude compared to the highly sophisticated weapons of the Galactic Council. Yet, time and time again, the humans won. Every battle, every skirmish, seemed to favor them, and it was beginning to unsettle even the most confident council members. What are they using? Lynette, the council's chief strategist, asked aloud in the midst of a meeting. He had been poring over battle reports for weeks, trying to find a pattern, some clue that would explain how the humans were succeeding. But each report was more baffling than the last. The Alfar, the ancient being who had been warning the council from the beginning, leaned forward, his long, weathered fingers tracing the surface of the map. I have seen their tactics, he said slowly, and I fear they are not simply using weapons. They are using something deeper. The room fell into an eerie silence. No one spoke. They all knew what the Alfar was implying, but none of them wanted to admit it aloud. The humans weren't just fighting. They were fighting with something more, something that transcended weaponry and technology. It was as if they were tapping into something primal, a force that had nothing to do with science or strategy, but something far older and far more dangerous. The Council had dealt with countless species over the millennia, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. Some were driven by greed, others by a thirst for power. But humanity was different. The humans fought not just for survival, but for something much more profound, something that resonated deep within their very core. And that was what frightened the Council. I don't understand, said Alaris, a council member who had long championed the idea of peace with humanity. Their weapons are primitive. How can they be so effective? The Alfar's eyes glowed faintly, an unsettling light that made the air in the room feel heavier. I believe they are using something far older than weapons, something the galaxy has forgotten. There was a long pause as everyone considered the implications of the Althar's words. The humans didn't just have strength. They had determination, resilience, and an unwavering will to survive. The more the Council tried to suppress them, the more they fought back. It was as if each defeat made them stronger. Each loss drove them to adapt and improve. Lynette, the strategist, clenched his fists in frustration. "We must find a way to counter this," he muttered. "We cannot allow them to continue growing stronger." But even as he spoke, a cold realization settled over him. What if there was nothing they could do to stop humanity? What if the human spirit, the very thing that powered their relentless drive, was something beyond their comprehension? Meanwhile, on Earth, the humans remained unaware of the galactic discussions unfolding around them. They were focused on one thing: the future of their species. Humanity had always been a resilient race, capable of overcoming the greatest obstacles. But now, they were facing a threat unlike any they had ever known. The Galactic Council had underestimated them, and that would prove to be their greatest mistake. For the first time in history, humanity was about to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to prove that no force in the universe could ever break them. The unseen weapon was not in their technology, nor in their ships. It was in their hearts, and that the Galactic Council was about to learn the hard way. The Galactic Council was growing desperate. After weeks of analysis, the reports were clear. Humanity was not only surviving against their forces, but thriving. They had held their ground in battles that should have been lost. In some cases, they even turned the tide, pushing the Council's powerful fleets back. The more the Council tried to strike at humanity, the more they seemed to resist and retaliate with a strength the galaxy had never seen before. Lynette, the Council's chief strategist, sat hunched over a holographic table, his eyes scanning the data. Battle after battle, human forces were outnumbered, outgunned, and yet they kept coming back, relentless as a storm. Each human victory left the Council leaders speechless, frustrated, and afraid. "How?" Lynette muttered to himself. He couldn't grasp it. The humans didn't have the most advanced weapons, they didn't have superior technology, yet they were winning. It wasn't just their tactics that were baffling. It was their spirit, their ability to adapt, and their sheer determination to keep fighting, no matter the odds. As Lynette struggled to make sense of the situation, an emergency transmission from one of the human battlefields flashed on the screen. The video feed showed a human soldier standing alone on a ravaged battlefield. The soldier was covered in dirt, their uniform torn, yet their face remained defiant, unbroken. The soldier held a weapon in their hand, but it wasn't the weapon that caught Lynette's attention. It was their expression. There was something about their eyes that unnerved him. They weren't afraid. They were resolute. "Why do they not fear us?" Lynette whispered. The video feed zoomed in, showing more of the battlefield. Human forces were regrouping, taking shelter, and preparing for their next strike. Despite the destruction around them, there was an unshakable will to rise again. The humans weren't afraid of losing. They were fueled by something deeper, something the Council hadn't accounted for. Lynette turned away from the screen, his thoughts racing. This isn't about weapons. This is something else, something that goes beyond what we understand. The Althar, who had been watching silently, spoke up in a voice as ancient as time itself. "Their strength is not in their weapons, Lynette. It's in their hearts. It's in their unity. It's in their belief that they are meant to survive." The words echoed in the room, and for the first time, Lynette felt a chill run down his spine. He had always believed the Council's power was absolute, but humanity had shattered that belief. They had tapped into something beyond their control. The Galactic Council had underestimated them in every way possible. But Lynette wasn't ready to admit defeat. He slammed his hand onto the table, his eyes burning with anger. "We will crush them," he said, his voice cold and hard. We will show them that the galaxy is not theirs to conquer. But even as he spoke, a small voice of doubt crept into his mind. Could they truly defeat humanity? Could they overpower a species that had shown such resilience, such determination? Elsewhere in the galaxy, humanity's response was clear. They would not give up. They were willing to fight with every ounce of strength they had, for their survival, for their future, and for their place in the universe. They had no intention of being the victims of this galactic war. They would be the ones to decide the outcome. As the battle raged on, the humans began to realize something. They were no longer fighting just for survival. They were fighting for the future of their species, and that, more than anything else, was their greatest weapon. The turning point had come. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back, and now they were about to learn the true cost of that mistake. The shockwaves of humanity's resilience reverberated across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, once unchallenged in its dominance, was now on the edge of panic. Every tactical move they made seemed to be countered with an unexpected human strategy. The galaxy's most sophisticated fleets, designed to crush any rebellion, were being outmaneuvered by a species they had written off as primitive. In the war rooms of the Galactic Council, debates raged. Some council members insisted that the human resistance could be crushed with more force. Others, like Lynette, were beginning to question whether their enemies could be beaten at all. The more they tried to understand humanity, the more they realized they were dealing with something that couldn't be measured by weapons, technology, or even sheer numbers. Humanity had something no one else could predict: an unyielding will to survive. On Earth, the fight was becoming something much more than a simple struggle for survival. It had transformed into a fight for the very soul of humanity. People who had never dreamed of battle were now standing shoulder to shoulder with soldiers. Engineers, teachers, scientists. Every human had become part of the resistance. Humanity's greatest weapon was not its weapons. It was the spirit that refused to yield. In one small underground base on Earth, a group of human leaders gathered in a dimly lit room, their faces lit by the glow of a single holographic map. The map showed the positions of the remaining galactic fleets, each one poised to strike. But despite the overwhelming odds, there was no fear in their eyes. General Sarah Collis, a decorated officer who had survived the first wave of attacks, stood at the front of the room. She looked over the map, her mind racing. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "But we do have one advantage. They don't understand us." She turned to her team. "We've been fighting with everything we have, but now we need to do more than fight. We need to show the Council that they can't control us. They think they know what we're capable of, but they're about to find out that we're capable of things they can't even imagine." A murmur ran through the room as Sarah's words sunk in. She was right. The Council thought they could break humanity with brute force, but they hadn't counted on the human spirit, a spirit that refused to be broken, a spirit that would never surrender. "Get the fleet ready," Sarah ordered. "We're not waiting for them to come to us. We're going to show them that Earth isn't a prize to be taken. It's a place of untauntable strength, and it's time they realized that." Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Lynette and the others were watching. They had underestimated humanity for far too long. They believed that sheer force could break them, but every attempt had only made humanity more determined. They watched as the human fleet mobilized, preparing to strike. "The humans are moving," one of the council members said, their voice tense. "They've figured out our tactics. They know what we're planning." Lynette clenched his fists, his mind racing. Then it's time to show them why they should have never challenged the Council. But even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at him. The humans had fought back, again and again. What if they were not just fighting for survival? What if they were fighting for something far more dangerous? What if they were fighting for their freedom, and for the freedom of every species the Council had ever ruled? As the humans prepared for their next strike, the stakes had changed. This was no longer a battle for survival. It was a battle for the future of the galaxy itself. The Galactic Council had thought they could break humanity. Now they were about to face the true power of a species that had nothing left to lose. Humanity had come to a realization. The fight was not just theirs to win. It was theirs to define. And they were ready to prove it. The Galactic Council's control was beginning to slip. Once, they had ruled the stars with an iron grip, their fleets the envy of the galaxy. But now, the unthinkable had happened. A tiny, seemingly insignificant planet had dared to challenge them, and had survived. Worse, it was winning. On Earth, the human resistance was readying its final strike. The once fragmented world, divided by national borders, had united as never before. Nations put aside their differences and fought as one. Military leaders, scientists, and ordinary citizens alike had been transformed into soldiers of a cause larger than themselves. They no longer fought for survival. They fought for freedom, for their homes, for their future. General Sarah Collis stood before the vast war map in the underground base, her gaze fixed on the coordinates. The human fleet was assembling, ready to make one last push. Every ship, every fighter, every pilot was part of this final effort. But as she looked over her shoulder at the faces of the men and women around her, she saw something that made her heart swell with pride. These weren't just soldiers. These were people who had been pushed to the edge and had refused to break. "They think we're weak," she said, her voice steady, but filled with an unspoken promise. "They think we can be defeated. But we know who we are, and we'll show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." In the command center, the final strategy was laid out. Earth's forces were small compared to the might of the Galactic Council's fleets, but humanity had something far more valuable: determination, ingenuity, and the will to fight for what was theirs. Every battle they had fought, every victory they had won, had led them to this moment. This was the last chance to show the galaxy that Earth was not to be trifled with. As the fleet prepared to launch, Sarah took a moment to look at the faces around her. She could see the fear, the exhaustion, but also the hope. They were not afraid anymore. In their hearts, they knew they were about to make history. At that very moment, on the other side of the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened. Lynette, the ever-confident leader of the council, stood before his advisors. He watched as reports came in. Humanity's final assault was imminent. "The humans are launching a full-scale attack," one of the advisors said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "They're not retreating. They're not giving up. They're coming for us." Lynette's face darkened. "We will crush them," he growled. "This insolence cannot go unanswered." But as he spoke, something nagged at him. Something about the humans' resistance felt different. Every time they should have been defeated, they had bounced back, stronger than before. They had pushed back against every attack, outsmarted every strategy, and defied every expectation. And now, with everything to lose, they were coming for the heart of the Galactic Council itself. "They will not break," Lynette muttered under his breath. "We'll show them what happens when you challenge the power of the Council." As the first wave of humanity's fleet soared into the stars, it was clear this was no ordinary assault. It was a message to the Council, a message that Earth would not bend, would not break, and would never surrender. The galaxy watched, stunned, as humanity prepared to face its greatest challenge yet. In the vastness of space, Earth's final stand was about to unfold. And though the Council had always believed they were invincible, they were about to learn that there was one force more powerful than their fleets. The strength of humanity was not just in their ships, their weapons, or their technology. It was in their spirit, their refusal to give up, and the deep, unshakable belief that freedom was worth fighting for. As the two forces, one far more powerful, the other driven by sheer will, faced each other in the cold expanse of space, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The battle for Earth had come to an end, but the fight for freedom, for humanity's place among the stars, was just beginning.